My guest is no stranger to Switch TV. Mwenesi Musalia, karibu sana to the show.
Real pleasure, Joyce. Thank you.
It's good to have you here. And of course, Mwenesi is an image consultant and a soft skills coach. And maybe just define what you mean by a soft skills coach.
Soft skills are what most people would not regard as technical skills. So your technical skills would be the ones that you would learn on, let's say, on the normal education spectrum, like going to primary, secondary, and tertiary education, going to university. You will pick up some technical skills, how to do skills rather than how to be. So I would categorize soft skills in the how to be side and technical in the how to do. So most people don't really focus on how they should be, how they should behave, how they should act. And that plays a huge part in your ability to forge ahead, both as at an individual level and also in society.
Absolutely. And I think that matters especially now.
Yes.
Where your boss is not, necessarily seeing you dropping sweats at your desk. And so the soft skills and how you're being and conducting yourself, especially during this time, also certainly matter. And we're going to be discussing a few things. And just to tease them for you, we're going to be looking at how do we be effective when we're working from home. But we're also going to be talking about the possibility of retrenchment. That is a very real concern for a lot of us right now. Some have already gone through it. Some are, facing payment cuts. And how do you sort of avoid being on that list? Is that even possible in a time like this one? And we're also going to be talking about how do you stand out in your workplace. So all of those conversations coming up next right here. And so be SMSing in your questions to 22299. So let's begin with the first one, Mwenesi, which is how can we be effective when we're working from home? In many ways, this is a struggle for a lot of people. Unfortunately, because we're so used to having someone stand over our shoulder, and really timing when we got in and if our assignments are handed in. How can one be effective at home?
I think it all goes back to how we set certain milestones and objectives for ourselves. The people who had certain targets and objectives for themselves, not necessarily for their careers, but for themselves at the beginning of the year. We always talk about New Year's resolutions and things that we want to accomplish at certain stages throughout the year. If those targets and milestones still exist, then nothing really should change other than the environment that you're in, which is now obviously you're stuck in your house and you have to now make the most of technology and so on and so forth. So I would say go back to those milestones, have a look at what it is, what plans you had for the year, what targets had you set for the year, what things did you want to accomplish. If because of the current situation, they are no longer possible, are you in a position to set new targets for yourself? Because the one thing that causes a lot of despondency and mental health issues is when you don't have something to look forward to, when you don't have a purpose, when you're just, living without an agenda or certain targets that you need to hit. So my first step for anybody dealing with this situation is to set some to actually go back to the targets that you had set, and if those are not applicable, set some new ones along the way. They could be weekly, they could be daily. Some people have them as frequent as daily, weekly, monthly, and even half year and annual targets. Those really help you stay focused, so that at least when you wake up every morning, you're not just looking at bad news, but you're actually thinking, okay, how far am I, or how close am I to what it is that I wanted to accomplish? And that way your mind is much more focused and less, the classic saying, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. And it's not just that, it's also, it can also cause you a lot of disruptions in your normal routine, especially the people who had routines. So get those targets, those milestones, get back to them. Try and create some new ones so that at least you'll have something to look forward to. If you don't have something to look forward to, the day can be really long.
Yeah. And I think that's, again, a skill to carry on forward. Even it's not just for this time, that idea of being able to recalibrate ourselves.
Yes.
And that happens even if the situation was normal right now. If something wasn't working out the way you wanted to work, very important to be able to dig yourself out of that hole and say, you know what, I need to recalibrate, I need to rethink, readjust, and change what I need to.
If I could add as well, part of setting targets is also scenario planning. I mean, I'm all for optimism and hope and making sure that you are positive about what it is that you want to accomplish. But we must also, and this is an excellent learning curve for majority of society, where things can happen that are beyond your control. In law, they call it acts of God or force majeure, and there's certain things that you just cannot you cannot plan for, you cannot see. But in the event that certain things happen that are beyond your control, what then? And I think the what then question is something that a lot of people will now have to start dealing with and practically inserting into your targets or your objectives as we go along.
Yeah. And so for the ones who are working at home, there are other things that they can be doing in those spaces to ensure that it is effective. Of course, now everybody's at home, your children, your nannies,
Indeed.
whoever else is at home. What would be your greatest tips as far as how to make your environment an effective place to work?
Very similar to why offices work is because they are structured in their layouts, they are structured in their timings, and they are structured in their compartmentalization. So the same way you would have a departments in your office space, I think you can also create that at home. Obviously, like you're saying, everybody's at home now. Your kids, the nanny, everybody, maybe extended family members, and you're all going to be sitting on each other and moving in each other's spaces. I think if you are in any kind of leadership position, or you were the breadwinner and you must still continue doing things, it's important first of all to compartmentalize your home and make sure that people now realize that, look, I know we're here, and you guys are not going to school if you have kids, or if you have a roommate or a spouse or whatever it is, and you have to work from home, then it's important that you start setting certain, not necessarily boundaries, but compartments. So if both in terms of time and physical space, being able to say, okay, you know what, this is now going to be my designated work area. You can set aside maybe the dining table or a quiet part of the room, and that place will be off limits from a certain time to a certain time if you need to get down and do some work which requires your focus. That requires a lot of communication, and I think if people were not communicating at home before, this is the time now to start really communicating and putting your message across, remembering full well that communication is 10% what you say and a full 90% how you say it and your body language as well. So when we talk about soft skills and how we're expressing ourselves to our kids, to our spouses, this is a really stressful time. We must maintain some emotional intelligence in how we communicate, even as we're trying to compartmentalize our homes and say, okay, this is daddy's working area, or this is the time that I will be working. I expect you guys to be quiet from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then from this time to this time, because maybe I have to make certain calls. I need to concentrate. I need to work on a couple of things. And technology right now allows us to do that.
Sure. And very important, especially for those who, because I know someone will be saying, you know what, Joyce, I don't live in a big house. Right? So I don't have my own room I can convert into an office. But communicating well, as you've said, that, you know what, at this time daddy needs quiet time, or mommy needs quiet time so she can do work. Very, very important. All right, so let's move on to our next agenda item here, which is the possibility of retrenchment. And as much as many of us don't want to hear that, it is a reality. In fact, we've been seeing it ever since last year. Our economy has not been doing that great. And a lot of people have been losing their jobs. Is it possible to sort of avoid being on that list at a time like this one?
I think so. And, you know, economies are not static things which stay the same throughout. They're very dynamic. And you'll find that whenever certain industries start to dip, others come in and take their place, and it's a continuous cycle. And one thing that I will encourage people is to look out for the trends right now. And you touched on us discussing the future of work. If I can introduce that aspect, it's going to be very clear to a lot of employers that brick and mortar and the infrastructure that people have relied on for such a long time are not going to be that necessary. And all technology, all those overheads, people are going to start realizing now, remember that time when I was telling you, oh, you have to clock in and clock out? That's going to be done. Your core issue now is how much value and relevance are you bringing to the table? I must stress those 2 points, value and relevance. Not work, not productivity, but value and relevance. Those are the people who will stay the course and will hopefully avoid the retrenchment curve. If you are not a person of value, how do you create value? value is really a subjective issue. It depends on what the other side thinks is valuable. So this is the time now to really study your company, study your industry, study your boss, understand what is of value to them, and start to find ways within your environment, even if it's restricted right now in terms of movement and so on. How can you start to demonstrate that value to the company, to the industry? And that means a big part, and that means playing your part in making sure that your value is seen and heard. Because value which is, kept in the house in the dark where no one can see it is of no consequence. If I don't see and hear your value, if I can't interact with the value that you're bringing to the table, it won't matter. And that's where your personal branding, your ability to be seen and heard on the various platforms is really going to be of importance right now.
Okay.
You need to find out, where are your stakeholders going to be online? Where are they? If they were clients, if they're clients, if they're bosses, if they're colleagues, where can they be found? Is it in WhatsApp groups? Is it on LinkedIn? Is it on Twitter? Is it on Facebook? Where can they be found, and how can you continuously show that you still remain valuable to them?
That you're not closed for business.
That you're not closed for business. If you retreat into yourself, if you become despondent, if you start to allow the negativity to take over, and you do not put yourself out there, you will find, no matter how productive and skilled you are from a technical perspective, your value will not be felt. The other word here is relevance. And relevance is really tied to your ability to be seen and heard as well. If you're not able to think critically about the issues that your company is going through, the issues that your boss might be going through, the issues that your industry might be going through, and start to come up with creative ways of solving those issues. The future belongs to problem solvers. The future belongs to artists. If you can create new, this is a time where everybody is going to be forced to create. Fortunately or unfortunately. And it doesn't matter whether you're the creative types. I think we've categorized creatives as artists and entertainers and musicians and that sort of thing. But right now, creative solutions to, let's say, the travel industry, which is suffering immensely at this point in time, you need to start conjuring up new creative ways of saying, you know what, we're in this situation, but what can we do? What new creative way can we inject some problem solving into the issues that we're facing right now, just so that you can maintain your relevance? It doesn't have to be things that work, but as long as you can show that you are thinking creatively and you are providing some relevance, then chances are when things are really thick and they're looking at the balance sheet, you will come up on the asset side, because they'll think twice before, like, okay, this person looks like they're actually thinking and they really want to participate and they're showing relevance and they're adding value. Let's put them in a different box while we're dealing with the rest of these people who we're not quite sure what it is that they're doing right now.
The word that comes to mind as you say all that is proactive. And I think certainly our whole work ethic is going to have to change. So unlike, we were just talking about generation, it would be X, I guess, where it was very much about just do the job, clock in 40 hours, just do what you're told. Right now, it's very much about problem solving, as you're saying. And just taking that initiative and being proactive in your space. And I guess maybe there are people who have either struggled with self-confidence or they struggle with the idea of, how do I do that without coming across as being over ambitious or too aggressive or just kind of trotting where I shouldn't, step on?
Well, those worries of being overambitious do not apply in this current situation. Right now, I hate to say it, but it's really every man for himself and every woman for themselves. I think we have to start thinking entrepreneurially. And in the various courses that we conduct, especially at places like Syntonomy and the Career Hub and so on, we always talk about, what's the difference between you being an employee who's given instructions and told what to do versus being an entrepreneur, thinking like a business person within the business? And entrepreneurs are people who are naturally seeking problems, not because they want to report the problem, but they're seeking problems so that they can offer a solution, so that they can raise their value. You will always be rewarded for solving problems, and whether it's your boss or society, the rewards will come. So as soon as other people realize that you have what it takes to be a problem solver, then whether it's your company or your boss, whatever happens, even if your company retrenches you, someone somewhere who can see your problem solving abilities will pick you up. And that means making sure that you are seen and heard, putting yourself out there, anybody who was recluse and for whatever reason shy. now is not the time. You have a meeting with yourself. If you're the type of person who does not like being seen and heard, who just wants to do their job and sit quietly and hope for the best, if you're in an industry which is, say, IT and tech related, which you've never had to be on the forefront anyway, those are industries that are still continuing, and so for the most part you'll be okay. But for the rest of us, this is the time to really look in the mirror and have a conversation and say, okay, you know what, I don't have to physically interact with people, but how can I take advantage of this massive, massive platform called the internet and social media and start making myself valuable and relevant on those platforms?
Right. And I want us to talk about both retrenchment for those who have found themselves being retrenched at this time. Where do they pick themselves up from? But also the ones who have gone through pay cuts. How do you still give that 100% effort when you know, like, you're struggling and you have real problems at hand? But here then there's this pressure of, you know, making sure that you're valuable and still providing relevance to your organization. What would be your thoughts about that?
And you've just on that last sentence, as you said, you're still providing value to your organization. This thing called the internet has now created the ability for you to provide value to everybody. Now it's not a question just of your organization. Your organization is there, yes, because they're giving you that monthly paycheck. But there are hundreds of thousands of millions of organizations out there. And right now, your core business is to grow your value as best as possible and start to churn out what your relevance would be to the market, not necessarily to the organization, but to the market at large. Of course, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's and accept that if they're going through difficult economic times, which I'm sure many, many companies are, be prepared to take that cut. But like I said, the future of work right now is going to be one where problem solving and self-employment and self-value is going to be much more of a feature than being tied to one organization.
Right.
The internet has completely shattered that.
Yeah.
Right now, if you want to provide value, you don't have to wait for one individual to say, okay, you know what, come in, here's a job, here's a paycheck, here's a desk. Right now, if I don't know how many people are connected globally, but it's in the billions. And if you can provide some kind of value and relevance to that market, then you stand a bigger chance of not taking such a hard hit when, instead of thinking, you know, in a singular perspective, like, that
this is your only hope.
My only hope lies with this organization. If this organization goes under, then that's it.
Yeah.
That's that thinking. I think this COVID-19 situation is going to absolutely shatter that.
Sure.
And for those who are willing to take that challenge and to start to create value for themselves beyond their organizations, they're going to be the ones coming out on top.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking, wow, what a time like for us to be so deliberate with literally everything. And that LinkedIn profile that has just been gathering dust, I guess this would be the time to really revive it. Yeah,
this is it. And if you were, and also I must stress the frequency, because as we know, social media and the internet relies a lot on frequency.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, something that is trending for a day or two has trended for long enough. Things are constantly changing online, and now with more people at home, I mean, technology is going to be that much quicker. So you need to be as frequent with your engagements as possible, and think critically about who would benefit from the value that you're bringing to the table, because we're not for everybody, Joyce. What my soft skills agenda and my ability to teach emotional intelligence right now may be useful to certain groups, but to others who are maybe doing construction and whatever, maybe it might not be relevant. So think also, this is the time to really empathize and put yourself in the shoes of your potential target market or your target audience. It might be a good time now to profile your potential clientele. I think one benefit of working from home is people who are very busy, suddenly you've got all the time in the world. Make use of that time. Set your milestones and start to think actively, what value and relevance am I bringing, and who would benefit from this value and relevance, and how can I get that value and relevance in front of them, either on a social media platform or on a platform such as this.
Absolutely. And as we just get ready to wrap up our conversation today, I want us to just go back and re-emphasize then, how do we actually stand out at our workplace? I'm glad that we've touched on the future of work and how you can begin preparing for that. And I think addressing this question now is very much linked to that, because you've talked about emotional intelligence, something that I feel here particularly we've just not bothered to pay much attention
Yes.
to. And with all the things that you're saying, discipline seems to really, really stand out. And us being able to develop that right now, being goal oriented, being aware of our strengths and our weaknesses. Maybe you can just, as we get ready to wrap up,
Sure.
talk to us about standing out.
When you mention discipline, discipline comes from setting those goals, because people are loyal to their goals more than they're loyal to anything else. If I know that my goal for the end of the month is to pay my rent and to ensure that there's food on the table, no amount of distraction and bad circumstances at work will prevent me from hitting that target. You will hit as 100% of what you aim for, as long as you're focused on that goal. And that's why I started off by talking about setting goals for yourself. If you're doing things because someone else has told you need to do them, then and you don't have the conviction or the ownership, it becomes very difficult. So you need to own that goal 100%. And then as you stand out, I mentioned your boss, your stakeholders, your industry, they will be on certain platforms. Find them, start to provide communication that shows that you are thinking about the current situation and how to solve them. I know we've had our fair share of WhatsApp groups and things like that. If you need to create a small one that includes just a few key people in your organization, just so that you can start to have that conversation about, listen, guys, I've been thinking, what if we do this? What if we tried this? What if we did this? And make sure that the people who make the decisions as far as paying you, I call them your primary target market, your potential clients, your potential, your current employer, the person who's making the decision as far as your paycheck is concerned, they need to see that you are proactive. They need to see that you are thinking critically. They need to see that no matter what's happening out there, you're taking active steps to try and create something both for the organization and also for yourself. On a broader platform, your responsibility is to ensure that you maintain a positive outlook. Right now, it's very trendy to switch on the TV and to get every single bit of news about how many people have died and how many people have gotten infected and all of these other really negative things that really are adding nothing to your life. My advice is stay positive. Switch off the noise. If you must get an update about how many people have passed on, do it once a day. Just if you really must be informed, it can't be like every hour you're constantly checking, oh, what happened, because
it's not going to help you add value anywhere else.
It will absolutely. And you will surround yourself with this doom and gloom that is not going to help you with the goals that you set for yourself. So if you've set certain targets for yourself, stay focused and concentrate on that, because around you, maybe one of the targets is, my kids need to eat. We need to continue to pay the bills. We need to continue to stay above water. And if that is the priority, then your priority right now is to make sure that you give yourself that much more of a chance to be in the space where people who have the ability to pay you are seeing what relevance and value you're bringing to the table.
Wow. Mwenessi, thank you so much for coming onto the show today and just really challenging our thinking around this. And I guess, at the end of the day, make sure that in this time, part of what you're using your time to do is to become a thought leader in your space.
Beautifully said.
Like, life has allowed all of us to now have that opportunity.
Yes.
It's not about the degree you have. It's not about how many years of experience. All those things we're told as young people that inhibit us from getting jobs. Spend your time on the internet looking at the right things and learning, and become a thought leader in your space, because you're the ones who are going to thrive thereafter, post-COVID-19. Thank you very much, Mwenessi, for coming onto the show.
Real pleasure, Joyce.
And if people want to maybe follow your work or get in touch with you, how can they do so?
Well, I'm part of several organizations, but my main handles are Get Yours with Mwenessi on all platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Get Yours with Mwenessi, and Mwenessi Musalia on other platforms as well.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We do appreciate your time. Hope to see you again. And with that said, guys, we're going to take a short break now as we get ready for our next segment for the day. It is a Global World Health Day, and so we're going to be bringing you some health tips along with that. Stay tuned. This is Full Circle with Joyce.